All right, so hey everyone, I'm David. Welcome to the Hack.py web development workshop. I'm just gonna leave the slide up for a sec for people that are watching from YouTube, but just saying it again, for this workshop, you'll need to download Python and need a code editor. So I'll be walking through this workshop with VS Code. However, feel free to use any other code editor you might use. And yeah, let's get started. So here's a little intro slide. Today I'm going to be presenting with Trissa. So just to do a quick introduction, my name's David. I'm a third-year computer science major, director of the Hack.py Python series. I worked with Python a pretty decent amount. And yeah, I guess Trissa, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Hi everyone, I'm Trissa. I'm a tech lead at HCM Hack, and my experience with Django is I built a project over the summer with it.
Cool, yeah. I haven't worked with Django a ton, but when I was working at a campus startup called Whistly, I did use Django on the back end. Shout out to Stanley. So Django's a really cool tool. I'll actually go into that in one of the next slides. But yeah, also I'm going to link these slides in the Zoom chat. So if you want to see these slides, it's hcmurl.com/hackpy3. All right, so just to start off with, what even is Django? So Django is a high-level Python web framework. It's mainly used for like rapid development with web apps, and it's really great because it has like pragmatic design. So what makes Django a little bit different from other web frameworks like Express is that it's kind of like all in the box. Everything you really need to set up like an API and get connected to databases is right in Django. If you're using like Node.js, for example, you have to install like Express and like Mongoose and a bunch of other stuff to get set up. But Django really has everything you need right there. Some of the core features of Django include code-first data models. So in your code, you actually define what your database looks like. So you define your tables and your rows in your code. Another feature is migrations. So essentially what migrations are is it's Django's way of handling changes in your database or in your tables. What you do is whenever you update your database, you make migrations so that Django knows that you've made changes. This is when you change your models, like how you structure the objects you store, stuff like that. Another cool feature is that it supports pluggable databases. So essentially what that means is, say for example, you're using like Postgres as your database and you want to switch over to like a MySQL database. Django makes it really easy for you to switch from one database software to another. And this is helped out with migrations as well. And then lastly, Django supports a REST framework. So if you've used the REST API before, Django makes it really easy to respond to API calls. I'd argue that it's probably just as easy as using Express if you've worked with that before as well. So here's a funny meme about Python. This isn't through Django, but I was looking for Django memes. I think this meme's a little bit outdated because it's been 30 years since Python came out, so 31. So yeah. Anyway, so to get started, I want to help you guys get set up with a virtual environment. So in order to start this workshop, we'll be using a virtual environment just so you can get Django installed. And yeah, so here are the instructions for that. And I hope I'm sharing my full screen. You share full screen. There you go. Cool. So here's the instructions for that. If you guys have the slides open, you can look, but this is for a bash shell specifically. So in the event that you're on like Windows, you might have to do some other stuff. I think the main difference with Windows would be instead of doing just Python 3-n venv my venv, you change Python 3 to just say py. And then for the source, you actually run this line instead. So this is what you'd use to activate your virtual environment. You just do the directory and then you activate or you run the bat file in the scripts directory. But I think everything else should be the same for the most part. I want to give you guys a couple minutes to do that because this might be a little finicky. I'm going to be walking through this with a bash shell on my Mac, but if you are using Windows like CMD, yeah, I recommend using git bash, but if you're using CMD, then it's going to be a little bit different, at least for this beginning part. But this is really all you have to do in the terminal for the workshop. So I'll give you guys like 2 or 3 minutes to get set up, and I'll set that up myself as well. And feel free to ask any questions in the Zoom chat. So I'm just going to make a new folder. Cool. So if you guys are using VS Code, to open up your terminal, you can just click New Terminal if you're using a Mac. I think it should be on the settings bar if you're on Windows as well. And then that'll just open this up right here. I'm just going to update my Z shell really quick. Cool. I'm just going to back to the slides. Yeah, I'll link you the slides. Here you go. It's not hyperlinked, but if you just paste that into your URL bar, it should work. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just making a directory. Oh, meant to make that in this subdirectory. That's all good. Made in my virtual environment. So Python's really cool, or Python 3 has a cool feature with virtual environments where essentially it's like a little container where you can run Python code and install libraries just local to the environment you're in. So the main difference between like regular Python and a virtual environment is that all of your libraries you install are in one place in the directory you're working in. While if you just don't have a virtual environment, it'll probably be in like your Python's root directory on your computer. Okay, so I'm just going to source the virtual environment. And it should take a couple minutes to install Django, but oh wow, that's fast. But yeah, make sure you're in the virtual environment when you do that, or else it may not work correctly. Yeah, and all this last line does, pip freeze and then arrow requirements.txt. Essentially, if you want to like save this code and you need to like re-download the libraries that you installed, you can actually just run pip install in the directory that you're in, and then it'll just download everything in the requirements.txt file. So if we open this up, it should just say everything that is installed in the virtual environment with their versions. So if you use Node.js, it's kind of like the package lock.json file, but this just keeps track of all the library versions that you have. Cool. So does anyone else need any more time? I'm sorry, is this supposed to be typed out on git bash? Yeah, so you can use git bash for this if you're on Windows. There's also another way to do this if you're using like the cmd.exe terminal. PyCharm, okay, so instead of doing, I'll actually copy paste this into the chat so that anyone else also using that can do this. Give me just a sec. So the two lines I highlighted, instead of doing Python 3-m virtual environment, my virtual environment, you do py instead, because I think they changed the abbreviation on the newer version on Windows. If you are using an older version of Python, you could just type Python 3. And then you also want to just activate the bat file. So with Mac, you use source, but with Windows, you can just run the bat file or the batch file. Yeah, so I'll give you guys one more minute to do that, and then we can move on to the next step. Any of you guys invested in GameStop by any chance? I know the GameStop stock went crazy yesterday. GME. Yeah, I heard that Robinhood shut it down as well. Yeah, I know, I kind of missed out, huh? So how do the commands look in VS Code for Windows? So it should be the same as what I put in the chat above. If you're using like WSL, so the Windows subsystem for Linux, you should just be able to run the commands I put in the slides. You can also use git bash. So if you're on Windows, you can select a default shell and you can change it to like certain types of shells. So Mac has like all these different types installed, like bash, C shell, K shell, all that. If you do have git bash installed, it should come up here as one of the options. So you can just select that, make a new terminal, and then type it up from there. My VNV is not recognized as a. So that means that the file you specified was not found. You should be running the batch file. So make sure it says this specifically. So you have to be like in the directory. My VNV. So make sure you're in the Hack.py directory as well, because it looks like where you are right now is you're in your users directory. So make sure wherever you created your virtual environment that you're running that command from there. The second Hack.py video is not on YouTube yet, but it's going to be on YouTube by this weekend. I just need to make some edits really quick and then I'll upload it. Python's not found. Jacob, that could be an issue. Wait, actually, if you're on Windows, try doing py instead of doing Python 3. But Python 3 should work. Okay, so just because we spent a bit of time on this, I'm going to move forward. But if Daniel, Trissa, or Henry, if one of you guys can help people out in the chat, that'd be really helpful, just so everyone can get caught up. It does matter. You have to be in Python 3 for this to work, to create a virtual environment. Okay, so I'm going to start moving forward. Keep the chat up 1 sec. Okay, so now we're ready to actually start like creating our project. We should be inside of our Hack.py directory we created. And if we've installed Django, we now have access to the Django Admin command. And what this does, it'll let us create our first Django project. So if you look right here, you can just copy paste this line into your terminal. I'm going to zoom in for clarity. Oh, this is a little bit messy. But yeah, just paste that into your terminal. It's going to create a new directory called demo. And inside of that directory is where all of your Django files are going to be. Wow, okay. Fix the zoom really quick. Okay, so this next slide is just about the structure. So if you are on VS Code and you open everything up, your structure should look like this. So you should have a demo folder with a nested demo folder inside of it, a manage.py folder. So if you've used Node.js before, this is kind of like your package.json folder. It's your like driver for running your Django server. And then you have like an initializer file, URLs, WSGI, you don't really need to worry about that, settings, and ASGI. So ideally, should look exactly like what we have here on our slide. Cool. All right. Before I move on, actually, if one of the hack staff people can join the Discord channel and just help people debug if they're still stuck, because I think it might be a little bit tricky to debug everything just over Zoom chat. So yeah, if one of you guys can join the Discord and help people out, that'd be really helpful. Cool. So now that we've created our first project demo, we have to run something called migrations. So I kind of mentioned this a little bit before on like what Django is on that one slide, but essentially we have to make migrations to actually put the models that we've created into our database. So this is something we have to do whenever we create a new Django project as well. It's just telling Django that all of the models we currently have in like our boilerplated template right here, we have to tell Django like they exist. So all you have to do is just run Python manage.py. Make sure you're in the demo folder as well for this. Python manage.py, and then migrates. Okay, that's fun. Something's not working. From exec. Oh gosh. I'm so confused. Okay, wait, give me a sec to debug this. Could be because I'm using Anaconda right now. I don't think I changed anything. I'm so confused now. Wait, Python? Maybe it's, yeah, I think that might be it. Python 3. Could not import Django. Okay, this is fun. Well, with a virtual environment, you shouldn't have to do pip3 install. Could not import Django. Are you sure it's installed? Okay, I'm gonna try to do pip3. If this doesn't work, I'm just gonna switch to my desktop computer, and I had it working fine on there. Could not install. Cool. Okay, let's see if this works. Okay, cool, awesome. It actually worked that time. Sorry to keep you guys waiting, but Python is really finicky with the syntax sometimes. Okay, cool. So now that we've made our migrations, we can actually start running our development server. So if we type in Python 3 in this case, manage.py, and then run server, what this will do is it'll launch our Django server. And if we go to this URL, you should be able to see this. The install works, and we're good to go. So basically, the Django server, if you look in the terminal, you can see all of the requests made. So for this little demo website they created, you can see there's a bunch of GET requests because we had to make REST API calls to fetch the fonts and the web page in general, just the HTTP page. So if you do that, it should all be good. And now we can actually create our first Django application. So what you got to do next, I'm just going to stop the server. You can do that by pressing Control-C on your keyboard, or yeah, I think Control-C should just work on Windows as well. And now just copy this line right here. What this does is it's going to create our boilerplate app. So Python manage.py, Python 3. And right now we're just going to be templating a basic Django application. So if you open up the boilerplate folder, it should look like this. I think that's also the next slide. But now you should have a folder with an admin page, an apps page, models, test, and stuff like that. So if any of you guys have taken CSE 110, you should be familiar with the model view controller. But essentially what this does, it separates out all of our code into different segments. So the view, yeah, MVC, I agree. The view basically is all the content that like the user would be actually seeing. These models are what essentially is our, I guess what our database is comprised of. So all the objects in our database, and not entirely sure what the controller is on Django, but that's where you write your tests. And yeah, as long as everything looks like this, you should be good from here on out. So the next thing is we have to actually activate our application. So if we open up our settings.py folder, so this is in our demo folder, we have to basically tell it, okay, like what app are we using for Django? So we have to basically specify, okay, we want to use the boilerplate app that we just created. And we can do that by adding a new line to installed apps. So this should be around line 33 in your Django stuff you generated. And you can just type in this line right here, boilerplate.apps.boilerplate config. Make sure you also have a comma, or yeah, comma at the end, just because Django is going to be unhappy if you do not have that comma and your code's not going to run. So now if we do that, basically what this does is it, like I said before, it references our application. And now we can actually start by creating a basic view. So now we can use Django to actually display something that someone can see on a web page. So to start off with, I'm going to open up the views.py folder. So if you open up the boilerplate folder and you click views.py, this is where I'd be able to create your views. So we're going to start off with a very basic view. The first thing you have to do is you have to import HTTP response. And what this means is that when you run a GET request to this view, we can return some sort of response. So in this little example, we're going to be returning hello world. So whenever we open up our web page, all it's going to say is just hello world, the classic beginner programmer message. So let's type this all out. Also want to ask if anyone has any questions up to this point, feel free to ask in the chat. All right, so I added this little snippet right here, but even though we've added this code, our page is going to remain the same. And there's a pretty simple reason behind this. So if we open up our server like we had before, I think I closed out of it for some reason. Yeah, nothing's going to change. Also, I closed the server. Just remember that. But the thing is, like, we haven't actually specified like where we can access this text, right? Where I said hello gamers. We need to actually create a route that Django can call and where we can actually view this text. So we can do that by specifying our URL configuration. So with Django, we need to be very explicit with our URL paths, which means that every time we want to access a resource, we have to have a specific URL that we can call to access it. So we can do this by first creating a urls.py file. So if you right click on VS Code, you can click create file, and then you want to create urls.py. So inside of this folder, or inside of this file, we can specify what URLs we want to be using for Django and what resources they'll be returning. First thing we need to do is import the Django's URL library, or import the path function from there specifically. And then we also want to import our views, because our URLs are going to be returning our views to the user. So this path function right here is imported from URLs, and each of these different parameters have a different meaning. So this first one, which is the empty string, just means that if we're at the root of our server, it's going to return the view that we want to show, which is views.index. So as we showed before, index is this command right here. And when we basically pass in views.index, we're passing in this Python function, which returns an HTTP response that says, hello gamers. So whenever we go to the root of our server and we open up the page, it should just say the text that I put right here. And then lastly, we also have to specify the name of the function. Cool. So I think now if we relaunch the server, debug equals true. All right, we also have to add the URL configuration to our main project as well. So there's another place we have to edit the URLs, which is also in the demos folder. This is where Django is actually running. So in this case, we already have most of this filled out. We just need to add one more line to basically tell Django that we want to be using the URLs file from our boilerplate directory that we specified. Oh, forgot the comma. Oh, that's why. Also, make sure you add includes the imported methods from Django URLs. Okay, now if we go to this, now it just says the text you want. So we had to also tell Django that we want to be accessing the URLs from our boilerplate directory. Cool. So up to this point, does anyone have any questions on how we got there, what everything means? I know it can be a little bit confusing, especially if you haven't really worked much with APIs before, but we're happy to answer any questions you might have. How did you create the boilerplate directory after adding boilerplate config to settings? So we created a boilerplate directory by running the command, where did we run it? Python manage.py start app boilerplate. So what this does is it creates a new Django application for us. And you do that inside of your demo directory. For some reason, it's not showing no module named boilerplate. That's weird. If you're running this full command, you shouldn't have an issue. Make sure you're also in the same directory as the manage.py. Otherwise, I'm not really too sure on how the issue is coming up. I think Henry's in the Discord right now. If you want to maybe walk through that with him, he might be able to help you figure that out in SOC. Okay. So anyway, I think we're ready to move on. From here on out, Trissa is going to be presenting the rest of the workshop. So I will hand off the screen sharing to Trissa.
Hey.
Yeah.
I do not have that stuff open yet.
For screen sharing?
Yeah. My computer might explode. Wait, David,
Thank you for coming, by the way.
I know.
Wait, what's that?
Wait, can you do the screen share for now?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Because I don't know, my Wi-Fi like killed itself earlier.
No, it's all good.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. So continuing onwards, we can start by making our own pages for your Django application. So we start out with the template system, which is a text document or a Python string markup using the Django template language. So in order to make a page for your project, first create a templates directory inside your boilerplate directory. and then create another directory called Boilerplate. And in there, create index.html. You'll end up with the path listed on the slide.
Cool. So I'm just going to walk through that really quick on my code as well. Yeah, all I got to do is just open up the Boilerplate directory, new folder, templates, and then another folder called Boilerplate, and then index.html inside of that. So essentially, like what a template is a place where Django can display information from its database. So you have to basically use templates to pull information from your Django databases and display it to a web page.
Yeah, basically Django applications look for templates within a template subdirectory. So the reason why it's named the way it is so Django is able to differentiate which templates are used for which applications. Sometimes you can have multiple applications with a project, so you don't want to confuse it. Django will render templates that match your application name. So a good practice is to avoid doing project name / templates so nothing's mixed up.
Yeah.
So within index.html, start off by putting this code. And then once you do that, go to boilerplate views.py. And then you'll be importing a render function from Django shortcuts. So you're able to display the boilerplate index.html page.
Mm-hmm. So before, like all we were doing was generating an HTTP response. So just basically just generating this text. But instead of just generating this text that we give this response, we can actually just render the page that we created. So I'm just going to update this one line right here. Yeah, so if you guys actually open up your server now, you see your landing page. Yeah.
Okay, is everyone able to get that so far? Okay, let's continue to the Django database, where this time we'll start playing around with the admin page. First things first is to understand what a Django model is. A Django model maps to a database table. We're using the built-in API to create objects once we finish with our models. To do this, we start by adding this code into models.py, where we're importing models from Django database, and then basically just creating a demo model with a title that's 200 characters long and a description that's also 200 characters long.
Yeah, so I think it's good to think about like models or like classes, kind of like a table in your database. So for example, for this table, we're storing a title and a description for each row in our table. So in this case, we have a demo title, which is going to be a char field, or basically just a string, with a max length of 200. And this is the same for the description as well. This is like another thing that makes Django unique, is that you're very specific about what's inside of your database. It's very syntactically clear in what you're doing, as compared to like Express. You don't really have the opportunity to specify this stuff. And this method right here, the underscore underscore str underscore underscore, it's basically returning like a string version of this object. So every time I want to render this demo, what we're doing is we're actually just returning the title we've given this object.
Okay.
Wait, I'm confused on why I'm getting an error now. Trista, do you notice anything that's wrong in my code?
Probably just models. Models instead of model.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. And then once we've created that, we can store changes to models by running the make migrations command. I think we might have used the second one on this slide before, but all it does is it creates the tables that you already defined within your code.
Yeah, so we're basically just telling Django that we've updated our models and that we want it to know that we now have a demo model. So I'm just going to copy this code over. Cool. So yeah, as you can see, it said created the model demo.
Okay, now that your models are created, you can go to your admin page now, which is basically just that link. But before you do that, what you want to do is create a super user because your Django admin page will ask you for a login. So just run that command, create a username and password, and then you can get started on that.
Yeah, got to make sure you restart the server as well. You're accessing the development server over HTTPS. There you go. Okay. Yeah, so if you get that error as well, just change your URL to HTTP. I think Chrome defaults to HTTPS for everything. So you might just have to manually change that for the admin page.
Okay, when you look at your admin page now, there's not much on it. There's just groups and users and nothing else. So in order to get your demos model to show up, you have to add it to your Boilerplate admin.py where you register in the model to show up.
Yeah, so all I have to do is another import. You're just importing the model. And then you have to register the model onto our admin panel. Now, if we refresh this page, there you go.
Okay. Okay, so now to display your added objects, go to boilerplate views.py and add in the following code.
Actually, I think we have to actually create an object first. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess.
Yeah, you just click the buttons that say add.
Yes. So you just put in a title and a description. So I'm just going to title this Hack.py. I'm just going to say it's lit. There you go. So now we can do this step, which is to actually render our added objects.
Yeah, so you're editing your views py file again, I think. You import the models and then go through it like that.
Yeah, so what this first command does, the demo.objects.all, is it gets all of our database objects that we've created. So in this case, we just created that one hack.py demo object. It stores them in this variable called latest demo list. And this next line basically just creates a context. And what a context is it's like a way to access these models from the view. So if you look on this line, the one thing we added is the context parameter. And by passing this context, we're basically telling our document that we can access this model information. Oh, and also make sure you import your demo to this as well.
Yeah, you pretty much already said a lot of what was on this slide, but basically what you're doing in index view is creating a query set to obtain all the demo objects. Then you're storing it into a key value mapping, as you can see in context. And then you use context inside of render to return an HTTP response object with the results of that template. Once you've done that, you can update your index HTML to actually take the information from that database model and show it onto the HTML. The syntax is a little funny, but make sure that the spaces on either side of the parentheses and all that are consistent.
Yeah, so as you guys saw,
and then as it shows down here,
oh, sorry.
sorry.
I'll just quickly say this. As you guys saw before, we passed in the latest demo list, and what we're doing is kind of similar to Python syntax. We're using a for each loop to go through this latest demo list, get the demo, and then we can actually extract information from each of our demo objects and display them on the page.
Okay, and then as I was gonna say, if you look at it, the double braces in Django, that means you're using that to show variables like demo, the demo title from that model. And then the single ones are like for like code blocks, for example, a for loop, or you can also do an if statement. It's done pretty similarly.
Yeah, so now if you guys go to your local host, you should be able to see it's lit. So whenever you add a new object, it'll also display up here. So say, for example, we want to go back to our admin panel. Let's create another object called Daniel, and description sucks. No, is cool. And now if we refresh our page, now we have a page full of lies. But yeah, there we go. No, I'm kidding. Not really, but yeah. That's how you create objects in Django. So yeah, Trista, do you want to walk them through the little interactive activity?
Okay, yeah. So we basically just shown you how to create your own application. Haven't given you much time to like try it out for yourself. So for your turn, try creating a new models inside models.py called dog. Think about different characteristics you might want and then store those, have those stored in the model as well. Once you finish that, add some example dog objects into the database using the admin panel, and then update views.py so we can fetch all of those, and then update your HTML files so we can see all of them.
So we'll give you guys about 10 minutes to figure this out. You should just be able to follow the steps we have in the slides. So I'd recommend starting from slide 25, where we create our demo model, and then just walk through up to our example, and that should give you enough information to get started with this. So we'll give you, I'll say like 8 minutes to figure this out. After that, we'll walk through it. And yeah, so I think we'll have our hack staff join the Discord channel. So if you guys just want to chat, or if you get stuck, they're a resource for you guys to reach out to. And just once again, I'll link the slides just in case anyone needs to look back at them. All right, everyone, I think we're going to go back to our demo. So hopefully that was enough time for you guys to figure this out. But yeah, I'm just going to walk through this myself. And yeah, so hopefully you should be able to see my screen now. So yeah, the first step to do this would be to actually create the model. So before we created a little demo model, and it's very simple. But now we can create another model, and let's just call it dog. And it would take in the same parameter, models.model. And let's think of a few things that a dog would have. So a dog would have a name, and this can just be another char field. So char field is just basically a string of chars, which is just a string. And I guess for those not familiar with CS, a string is just like words. I probably should have made that clear earlier. And then what else does a dog have? We'll say breed. So models.char field. I'll set max length 200 again for the breed. And then we'll say bark. I don't know. Dogs bark in weird ways, so let's give it a unique bark. So these are the 3 fields we'll have for our dog. And then we also want a default return. So in this case, we're just going to set it to be the name of the dog. self dot. Yeah. Cool. All right. So once you guys figure all that out, the next step would be to go to, actually, I think it would be make migrations, right? So pull that up really quick. Stop my server. And now just run the make migrations command. So Python 3 manage.py, make migrations, and then specify the app name, boilerplate. So as you can see, it created the model dog. And if we run Python 3 manage.py migrate, this will run our migrations and tell Django that we've created this new dog model. Okay, so we've already created our admin page, but now we actually have to register the new model to our admin page. We do that by also importing the dog and running admin.site.register dog. So now if we run our server and we open up our admin page, refresh it, there we go. Now we can add dogs. So let's add a dog. I'm gonna name my dog Pudgy. He's a mutt and his bark is awa awa. I hope you guys get that reference. I'm gonna save this guy. And another dog. I have a dog named Kate. She's a Jack Terrier, I think. She's like a mix of a Dalmatian and a Jack Terrier. I'll just say Jack Terrier. And I don't know, she just doesn't bark. So there we go. 2 dogs. Very simple. So after we do that, after we make our 2 dogs, we can actually display our added objects. So in this case, instead of actually rendering our demo object, I think we'll just render our dog instead. So let's say latest dog list and change the context as well to just return the dog list. And that's really all I have to do there. And now if we go to our views, I believe, right? Go to our views. Oh, no, sorry. We're already in our views. In our index.html, we have to update this field as well. So now we looped through the demo and the latest demo list, but now we passed in the context, the latest dog list, and we want to loop through each dog. So instead of returning the demo's title, we're going to return the dog's name as a header. And then let's also display the, what else do I want to display? The dog's breed. And just for fun, let's also do the dog's bark. Cool. So now if we go to our server, we got our 2 dogs displayed. So let's say create a new model in Django. All you have to do is like add a new model to this file. You want to update your views, and you'd also want to update your HTML file. So that pretty much concludes our Django demo. There's a lot more you can do with Django than what we covered today. We really just covered the basics of Django, but in reality, it's a very, very, I guess, extensive tool you can use. I think this hopefully was a good introduction for you guys. I think Django is still pretty widely used today, although I know a lot of like Node.js frameworks are very popular right now. Django is really lightweight, and I think from this demo, you can see that it's actually not that hard to use, even though it looks a little bit intimidating at first. So yeah, with that being said, thanks everyone for coming. Really appreciate having you. I think we'll be having a little bit of a social in the Hack Discord channel if you guys want to come by and play like Scriblio or something, or just come to chat. And yeah, so thanks guys for coming. I'm gonna leave a feedback form also in the chat. So we really appreciate if you guys can leave feedback, like tell us what we did well, what we didn't do too well. Any feedback's really appreciated because we really just want to make the best workshops we can for you guys. So here you go. And yeah, thanks everyone for coming. And thank you, Trista, as well.